Welcome back to Beyond the Billboard. Greg Wise is enjoying a very well-deserved rest this week. I'm Charlie Riley, head of marketing for OneScreen, and we've got a great guest with us today, Dmitry Shamis. I almost butchered that, like I said I would probably, but he just started a new agency he's going to share a little bit about, which is a great topic for us. It's called oSnap, but he can get into more of this in a few minutes because brand and creative work is really a big focus that we talk a lot about when we talk about out of home. He's the former global head of creative and brand at HubSpot, and HubSpot is near and dear to our hearts as our founding teams came out of HubSpot. So, Greg, it would have been great for you guys to kind of go back on some history and have some inside jokes that I wouldn't understand. But welcome to the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're obviously a creative genius, so we're thrilled to have you here. But yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Charlie. You did a great job. You didn't butcher it at all. So don't worry about it. And creative genius is awesome. I am immediately fearful of just letting this entire audience down. So we'll do my best. But Greg and I will have to catch up one of these days. And maybe if this goes well, you have me on for a second round at some point.
We would absolutely love to. Although I did just notice that the Manchester the scarf back there, and as a Tottenham fan, not sure if you'll get a second invite, but it's okay. I can.
Honestly, based on this season, I don't think either of us can talk any kind of trash at all.
No,
So yeah.
no, yeah. Maybe next year we'll have a better conversation about European soccer. But yeah, let's talk brand because I think genius does fit the bill here. We were chatting a little bit before about brand. Tell us about the agency you started because it sounds like it's a big need for a lot of creative departments as the world's changing with AI and just the execution. We talk a lot about creative is coming back, and that probably means a lot to everyone different in different ways. But yeah, tell us about what you're building and how you're helping creative teams bring creative back.
For sure. So my partner Jen Proud and I, we launched a brand agency called oSnap very recently. We've been working on it for a while, and honestly, we've been unofficially working at it for quite a bit. But it was one of those things where it's like, let's put a name to this thing. Let's put it out into the world. Let's make it official. And we're recording this in April. It really we we LLC'd at the very end of March. So that tells you how officially fresh it all is. But nonetheless, oSnap is a brand agency and we're focused on brand systems. So, how you'll work with most agencies and you'll have this great, rebrand exercise or new brand exercise, whatever it is. And then one day someone emails you a PDF and says, good luck. And that's the end of it. And then you're just sitting there and you go, what did I just pay all this money for? I don't know how to take next steps, or I don't know how to bring this to life, or I know what to do with this on day one, but day two comes along and all of a sudden I'm now stuck with this brand that I don't know how to grow or evolve or scale. So the goal of oSnap is to really think about brand in a different kind of way. Yes, it's got to look good. It's got to feel good. It's got to make a difference. It's got to be differentiated. No question about that. But if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't matter. So not only are we going to create this beautiful, amazing brand for you that makes sense, but it's also going to be built into your visual identity. It's going to be built into your design system for your website. We're going to set up your Canva instance. We're going to, help you with video with tools like Capsule. We're going to set up a DAM for you. We work with companies like Air. There's a lot of really great opportunities for brands, for companies, for marketing teams to get started right away. And that's what we want to do. We want to help teams get started with their brand on day one. And that's what a brand system is to us. And, a lot of these learnings did come from our time at HubSpot where, there was this massive global team creating content in different languages for different audiences, different business segments, right? Different verticals. And all of them had their own kind of specific needs and wants and desires. And me as the person kind of at the center of all of that with my team, it was like, well, we can't do what you want to do because that's not aligned with the brand. We can't do what you want to do because we don't have the tools for that. We can't do what you want to do because that's going to take months and budget that we don't have. And so we really needed to stop and think about, well, how do we build a system that works for as many people as possible while also leaving the door open for us to continue being creative? And that maybe was honestly the initial kind of thought there, where we then built the system. I started my career as a developer, as an engineer, and I thought about it kind of like systematically in that regard, where it's like, how do we build a system that we could, append to? And that turned into this kind of like module library that the entire HubSpot team was using. I think as of last count, there were maybe 30,000 web pages created using it that not a single developer had touched, which I think is really cool. And when I took over the creative team, it was like, how do we do this at scale across all of these disciplines? And design was the first one, and Jen led the effort to build out our relationship with Canva and that just like overall kind of thinking as to how we open up and enable design with this greater community. And like, I know I'm kind of rambling and talking through a lot of things at this point, but ultimately, like when we think about scale, there were two goals. And that's what I think is really important for listeners to kind of take away. The first goal is that creative should not be a bottleneck. Brand should not be a bottleneck. It should enable every employee, every team to do their best work as fast as possible, go to market and learn. The second is that your creatives need time to be creative. So in the context of like, this conversation and out of home in particular, right? For a lot of companies, creating out of home campaigns of any kind is a really big challenge. It's also a big step forward. It's something they probably have never done before. And forget even like the actual monetary goals associated with it. The creative goals are just like, we want to do something differentiated. We want to do something that's never been done before. We want to do something that no one has ever seen before. And then the creatives have like 20 minutes to come up with a concept and execute on it. And everyone is shocked that it's not something new that hasn't been seen before. So the second goal is really about creating that time and space for creative work to be its most creative, while also enabling the teams to get done the work that they need to get done across the board.
A lot. I think there's a lot of ways to kind of ask some follow-up questions, but I like how you talked about the correlation to creative work for out-of-home advertising versus digital, meta ads or LinkedIn ads, which I think we've talked a lot about this. Is what we do really well is we help companies. We use a lot of data to help plan and identify the right places to put out of home. And then the other half of that is what you're saying on a billboard or on a transit ad or a wrapped car. And it's like you said, how do you find a way to do something no one's ever done before, do it quickly, do it inexpensively, which we know like all those things just don't equal out to reality. It's important for someone on a creative team to be able to adapt best practices within the out of home space. You want to be simple. You don't have a lot of time for someone maybe to read a billboard as opposed to a transit ad, which you have more dwell time there, someone standing around. That's very different for if you've only designed for the digital world. And for marketers growing up, that may be the only exposure they've had to creative work or design. So can you talk a little bit about, any work there from the standpoint of how to how to adapt the creative process to the medium that you're using?
Yeah, you have to, I mean, you literally just kind of like summed it up, and not to like cop out on the answer, but like you have to understand the medium. You have to understand the channel. You have to understand who's going to see it, when they're going to see it, what state are they in when they're seeing it, like what are they expecting when they see it. And then you have to adjust and align your own goals. So, you know what, when you're creating transit ads, for instance, like you said, you have more dwell time. Someone might be on their phone as they're looking at it and go, oh, let me check something out. Or you might throw a QR code. At the same time, if you have this giant billboard on the highway and someone's driving 80 miles per hour, they're not sitting there just like, oh, I'm trying to get this thing. So you have to hook them in a different kind of way and think about that outcome differently. So for me, it always starts with who's the user, where are they, what are they doing, and what do we want them to do? And in the case of most out of home, for me, I just want them to remember the name, or at least remember that there's some company or some solution out there that does the thing that they're looking for. It's like we've all seen these billboards that are using essentially 12-point font that are, just writing paragraphs. It's like, who's that for? Like, and I want to avoid that. And usually that's a stakeholder issue more than a creative issue, truth be told. But you got to take the time to understand your audience and then meet them where they are. So if that's digital, you could play around with motion, right? You can play around with interactivity in different kinds of ways. You can lead them to a more bespoke experience, right? Like, you have an ad that says, do X, Y, Z. If they click that, you can take them to a landing page that tells them more about X, Y, Z. You're not doing that with a billboard. So you really just got to think about all the different kind of scenarios that your target audience is in, and then meet them.
I think you hit on what a lot of brands that we work with, they'll ask us, like, how do we know if it's working? And it really depends on what their overall goals are. But like you said, someone sees a billboard. First of all, it's illegal to throw a QR code on that because we don't want
Good to
someone
know.
getting into a car accident. But we see they'll go back and Google that brand shortly after. We see organic search going up. So I think that, like you said, that exposure and recommending enough exposure so they see it enough times and in the right places where they're traveling to say, oh, I remember what they do. Or it's, and we could talk about HubSpot's campaigns, like owning a color or owning, using that brings you right back to understanding what that is. I think that's really important from the creative side. Yeah. Could you talk about, your work at HubSpot and HubSpot using out of home? I mean, I know like their first campaign, like how did the team make the decision to think about out of home? Like, how did you think about what's going to be on that billboard or those sets of billboards and wrap cars, things like that? Can you talk a little bit about any experience back in your HubSpot days?
For sure. I mean, the decision to go out of home was a really big one. It was one of those things that, especially in the early days, felt counter to the kind of thesis of inbound marketing, and that, like, well, ads are inherently disruptive, and we don't want to do that. We want people to come inbound. One, we realized that there are different ways to do ads, right? Like, you could do the pop-ups, flashy, like in your face, distracting way about it, or you could do it in a way that is additive to the experience. And so as we were thinking about out of home, it was about, how do we make it additive? How do we do it in a way that feels organic and natural to the brand, as opposed to like, oh, we're just going to throw up like the biggest, shiniest, most orange like billboard you've ever seen, like to the point where you can't not see it. Like, we legitimately had conversations about how bright it might be and like blinding people with the reflection off the sun. And we obviously didn't want to do that. So orange was primarily used as an accent. But really, like, at this point, I don't remember what the headline was, but it was something very simple about just like probably like grow better with HubSpot. And it was in the San Francisco market. It was at a time when the CRM was first really making its debut, and it kind of felt like we need to put a marker in the sand or in the dirt. I don't know, whatever the saying is. Like, we need to do something big. Let's go with that one. And we kind of just put the idea together at the last minute, and I want to say we had the billboards up within like 3 weeks or something like that. And that was at a time before OneScreen, right? That was at a time when buying media, especially in that market, was not only super expensive, but could also take a while to find the right placements. And we just, we set that goal of getting them up. I want to say we made the call on, March 10th. And I don't know why these months are kind of repetitive at this point, but like the goal literally was April 1st in the San Francisco market, we're going to be up, and we were up. And it was really cool because we got to see the positive response. And it wasn't just like, oh, search is up or traffic is up in the San Francisco market. It was investors and friends and colleagues and all these people just like texting photos like, did you do this? Like, we just saw this out and about, out in the wild. And that was one of the coolest things, where it's like, I think you could probably even go back in Twitter now, where all of a sudden there would be like people like, whoa, like where did this come from? And it was great because I think that response, in addition to obviously the actual economic impact to the brand, but like that response was what kind of gave us the confidence to do more. And then we started creating more out of home campaigns around like inbound in Boston. And as over time, as there were more events, more campaigns, more products, whatever it might be, like we started playing around with it more and more. And I know obviously I'm not there anymore, but you see a lot of the work that they're doing at like Art Basel and with I think they sponsor some NFL teams now or show up, but I know they're at MetLife Stadium. I'm also a beleaguered Jets fan, if you can see that flag. And, we've had that conversation, you and I, but like, I'll be watching games and I'll see the logo show up in different places, which is really, really cool because I know how long it took to get there. But those kind of first baby steps, as scary as they were, they brought about the confidence to take more baby steps, which turned into, bigger steps. And yeah, I'm sure they have some wild stuff planned for the future now.
Yeah, you brought up some great examples because we named this Beyond the Billboard, this podcast Beyond the
Mhm.
Billboard, because for someone who is not a marketer who's never run out of home before, they may think of that, like you said, that billboard on the side of the thruway. But there are so many other applications, like you in stadium signage, screens inside of restaurants and or like inside of Uber car, like
Yeah,
your ride share to wrapped cars to like street teams. So and those are all things that I know HubSpot's done well. Yeah, that experiential piece that's it's all part of the out of home experience. And I think you brought up the anecdotal measurement tactic that we've heard from, I forget, it was I think someone else on the podcast who talked about when they ran a campaign, an out of home campaign, they were getting texts from people like, "Oh, this is really cool. I saw your billboard," and they're sending them pictures of that. So yeah, it's to stand out. It's a really great way, especially in San Francisco, where there's if you're selling to a tech environment, we've had clients that like whatever analogy you're using, because I always butcher those things too, but you want to plant a flag and we've had clients tell us that like we're here to show up, we want to look bigger than we maybe are, we just did a raise or we just did a rebrand and we want to tell the world our story, and this is a great canvas to do that on. So yeah, it's cool to hear how HubSpot's been innovative in a number of ways, but using out of home as a channel. And I think you hinted at one other piece too, that it's complementary to digital. We've never told someone take your whole budget and throw it into an out of home campaign. It should be complementary to what they're already doing online. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
for sure. Like I remember one of the first like big campaigns we did was like the Catherine Hahn pirate ship spot, if you remember. And yeah, it was like, there was the commercial, like the TV commercial, but there was a digital experience. There was a physical experience that led to that digital experience. The commercial itself led to that digital experience. So like, when I think about advertising as a whole, they're not these disparate pieces. They can't be these disparate pieces because lose people. You want to take people on a trip, on a journey, and the more tied together you are, the more you can push people down a rabbit hole. The more likely they are to be interested in your brand and your offering and your product, whatever it might be. And like, God forbid, they might actually convert and become customers. But they're not going to do that if you're just giving them random bits and pieces and not connecting the dots for them.
You used the word convert, and I was at the Pavilion CMO Summit last week, and a lot of the conversation was around brand is back. While measurement is still king, and we all have to own a revenue number as marketers, there's an appetite for not everything having to be attributed back to a certain last touch or first touch or whatever model you want to use. You're launching, or you just launched a brand agency, focused on the creative process. Can you talk about what you're seeing and what, like, to be able to bring that creativity back to marketing? It's me not saying it's ever went away, but the renaissance of the ability to, like you said, take people down a journey and a path, and it not just being, we need to convert them at this stage. It sounds like obviously you're seeing more of that. Can you maybe just allude to what you see in the industry?
For sure. And I mean, I definitely think it went away. I gotta say it because I think it became too cheap to target people with digital ads, and everyone just kind of went that route. And now that that's the standard playbook, everyone is stuck, right? Like there's no differentiation. Everyone is kind of just, oh, we need more ads, more ads, more ads. They're spending more money. They're not hitting ROAS the way they want to. Like it's a whole cluster, and I think it's very self-induced in that like the marketing kind of industry within B2B just said, oh, we don't need to be creative. We just need to throw money into the ad machine and we'll be great. And then didn't think about the fact that everyone else is going to do that too. So that's like a big thing that we're fighting against. And I think about like some of my like creative colleagues who are literally just sitting in a day job, day in and day out, pumping out ads that maybe get seen, maybe don't get seen. And they do it in hundreds of different like variant sizes, and that's their job. And these are people who are extremely talented, extremely creative, who are capable of doing so much more, but the environment that they're in doesn't allow for it. And that's what we want to change, really. Like we want to create a world where companies can build brands that are differentiated. They could build brands that scale. They could build brands that grow while also maintaining those day-to-day kind of like number and more metric-based goals, whether they be within the ad space, whether they be, website visitors. It doesn't matter what the goal is, because there's always a way to do that in a more kind of scalable, non-manual manner, or requiring of a creative. So, what I'm seeing is this desire to do more, right? Like we all hear about do more with less. So I'm seeing and hearing about this desire to do more, both from the marketing leadership side and from the creative leadership side, but confusion around how to do it, because I think the last, let's call it 10 years or so within the space have taught bad habits. And you and I talked about this before the show. I think habits are the hardest thing to break. Once you start doing things in a certain way, it's really tough to do them in a different way. And what we want to do is try to help companies build brands and think about them in a scalable fashion as early as possible, so that as they scale and grow, they can get to a point where doing things the right way, and again, it's my right way, but you have to be opinionated in this game, but doing things the right way is what's going to help them succeed and get out of this kind of just hamster wheel that we've all found ourselves in.
How about this for an opinion? Will AI kill creativity?
No. AI is creativity's best friend. And I say that because AI is one of the primary kind of like resources that creatives can use to get out of the busy work. So, one of the things that, we build within our brand systems is, a custom brand GPT for companies. Does that replace the creatives? Absolutely not. That just stops the creatives from having to do all of this like minutia that kills time and prevents them from working on something that's meaningful, truly. So I love AI. I personally use AI on a daily basis. I encourage clients and customers to use AI, but AI is not creative. AI is for execution purposes. And if you give it, the right command, it'll do the right work.
I love that answer. Yeah, I think it's, if you can utilize it, and we utilize that, when people think, how does AI tie into our phone? We help give suggestions around the creative that's being used, because we want to optimize that. So we'll tell somebody, your logo should be on the right hand side versus the left hand side because it's on this side of the road, and like we'll give suggestions, but ultimately, they still need to have a really great story. They need to take them on that path, like you said, but
Yeah.
it can make the process out there.
100%. Yeah, AI is a second set of hands. It's not a brain. It can't be a brain. Like you're the brain. Fingers crossed, I'm still the brain after this conversation. But like, if we don't come up with it, AI won't, or whatever it comes up with is just a weird combination of a million different things everyone else has already come up with. So you're just back in that same kind of hamster wheel.
Dog, I'm sure everyone can hear my dog barking, so I think that he's saying he agrees with everything that you said so far.
Smart
And
dog.
I trained him on GPT to find all the mailmen. Dimitri, where can people find you? How can people connect with you, learn more about what you're up to? Really appreciate what you shared, but yeah, how can people connect with you?
Thanks, Charlie. This was awesome. A ton of fun. I'm grateful you had me on. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so definitely give me a follow there. The new agency is called oSnap, and the URL for that is osnap.agency, OHSNAP. I send out a weekly newsletter called The Brief Creative, which you can sign up for at thebriefcreative.io. And I also host my own podcast called What's Your Process, where I interview some of the world's best marketers about, the one thing that they're world class at, and they walk me through the process for doing that thing. And that's available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the places where you get podcasts. But start on LinkedIn. I talk about what I do probably way too much. So even if you didn't get any of that, you will find it all there.
We'll share your link because you are an excellent follow. You put out really great content. And yeah, I do. I meant what I said before about creative genius. So excellent to hear your opinions on this. And yeah, we'll have you back on for sure. We can commiserate soccer next year as well.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dmitry. Appreciate it.
We'll see ya.